Right, the floor is open. Anybody'd like to share? I'd love to hear what's happening in your practice. Okay, Diane.
Two things from this week. Um, I think I just am noticing with other people, it's much for me easier to sit with their suffering or it's just easier. And I think when it comes to the pushing away, it's more myself.
Yes.
Been trying over the past few months to become a little more granular when I notice I'm triggered or I feel something. Instead of getting busy or whatever it is that I usually do, to try to be more granular and identify what the feeling is and why I'm having it. And it's like part of my ongoing personal growth. But it's interesting if I just let it go and acknowledge that it's suffering. It's a much more vulnerable, I just feel so much more vulnerable and just sit with it. And it feels, I sort of feel almost childlike, where I'm just giving myself compassion. It's just a different experience. Um, the other thing this week, I can't remember where I read this, and I don't know how to pronounce this word, but it's a German word. They often have these great words that we just don't have a comparable expression. It's called Weltschmerz.
Weltschmerz.
Weltschmerz. Do you know the word?
Weltschmerz, yes.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, sort of this world pain. And the article that I read about it, when the world disappoints us, and of course, I think we're all feeling it so much right now. But the article was interesting because it said Buddhists accept the fact that life is suffering. Being a human is suffering. So there's less, I'm not sure this is true, but there might be less pain when the world disappoints us or something because we acknowledge this is suffering. If you hold on to the fact that the world should be a certain way and people should be a certain way, this can be, I don't know, what's your understanding of the word? I just thought it was a great word.
I think you're onto it that when you have some judgment about how things should be, it's often causes suffering. It does. And there's sometimes we talk about the second arrow, shooting the second arrow. Sometimes there's something that hurts, and then we shoot a second arrow, which is a kind of a curse on it, like this shouldn't be. There's something wrong here. This shouldn't be happening. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the world. There's something wrong here. And that's more than the primary disappointment when things happen that are difficult. So that's definitely a factor. I also wanted to just comment on what you began with. I think I love that you can feel the difference, that you talked about the difference between, what you might do that's a little more analytical about, and that can be helpful to like become granular and like, what am I feeling? What triggered this? All that's very helpful because you start to see the causality that's going on, what actually is there. But what I love is that somehow when you drop that and this is suffering, you are present in a fuller way. And it does, you feel the vulnerability. It is a little childlike. I think when we were childlike, when we were children, we were in our hearts more. We lived in our hearts more. It's why the world touched us so much more. We got so much more excited by things, so much more disappointed by things. As we become adults, we get a little more. Some of it is wisdom, but some of it is like numbness. There's some way that we just get more protected, and so like come down to just the bare suffering of it. Yeah, there's something that you feel like a child. You don't yet have all those intellectual skills to load onto it, and it's just what it is. But that's holy work. It really is holy work. That being in your heart with it that comes up there. It's different than the more analytical work. It really is. And I think it heals on a deeper level, whatever that is. That just that presence with suffering. So thank you. That's it's helpful for us to recall.
So, a lot of what you've been talking about tonight and in some of the discussion last night too has um, made me think a lot about the grief work that I've done over the years. Um, and most those of you who've listened to me talk before know that we had a child who passed away as an infant. He would have been 22 this year. And I've been involved in a nonprofit group that provides support to families that have lost infants and children over the years. And part of what I do every month is I write personalized love notes to families who have lost children. And I've been doing this for about almost 20 years now. I was thinking about this the other night because I was talking to one of the other women on the board, and I have written literally thousands of these notes now. Um, and we hear back, not all the time, but regularly enough to know that how meaningful they are. And one of the things that I hear all the time from families is just how much they appreciate knowing that their child was remembered and that someone was thinking of them and hearing their name and just feeling that somebody is present with them in their grief. So I write these during the anniversary month of their loss. And and even though I'm the one who writes these and has been writing these for years and years and years, um, members of our board then send me a note in January, which is when my son died. And it still means so much to me 20 some years later that they're present with me, remembering with me, and acknowledging that he mattered. And and I think so. I've had the honor, for lack of a better word, of actually being present now 3 times when someone's passed. And as Kate was talking last night, like just that feeling, that transition, and that um as hard as it is, like every single time, I've been glad to be there. Yeah. Um, and I just think it's, I like that Ram Dass thing. I mean, we're here to walk each other. Um, and the last thought that I have is you were talking a little bit, or I can't remember exactly what you said, but like when I've talked to a lot of folks, about their grief over these years, and um, the the pain. I think the folks that the people that I see that really have the hardest time working through their loss are the ones who get stuck at why me? Why did this happen to me? Why my child? Why me? Why me? And we found out Ryan was going to die when he was like 4 days old, and my mom's thought was like, well, why? What did you do? Like, what did you do wrong? Um, that might have influenced the last 20 years and some of the conversations we've had. Um, but um, but my immediate thought was like, why not me? Like he's, like he was meant to be this is him and I'm me and we're in it. And that was one of the most incredible years of my life, was walking him through that and walking with him through that. Um, so yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for
It's
letting me
so,
share that.
so beautiful to be reminded of. Beautiful service that you do
Yeah.
in a way of healing yourself by serving other people.
Mm.
Really lovely. I don't know if I may have told you this story already, so forgive me. I'm an old guy. I repeat myself, but there's a there's a beautiful story in the Buddhist suttas. Um, there's a woman. She has a name. I don't remember her name. I haven't looked at the sutta in years, but she lost a child, and so in this sutta, she's carrying her dead child around all the time as if it's still living, and so she has this interaction with the Buddha, and the Buddha asks her to go around the village and to ask each person, ask a mustard seed from each person, from each family, actually, eh, to ask if there's a family, excuse me, to ask if there's a family that has never experienced loss. And if they have experienced loss, to listen to their story and collect a mustard seed from them. So she goes around and talks to the villagers, and she, of course, can't find a single villager who hasn't had a loss, many of them equivalent of what she's experienced. And finally, she buries her child and is at peace with it. And she realizes it's not her personal affliction. You know, it's not. It kind of comes with this human birth. We don't know what exactly we're going to get with this human birth, but this stuff happens, and it's not a sign that you've done something wrong. It's how do you relate to it? How do you relate to it with wisdom, with skill, what this world is actually like, and its intense vulnerability. So oftentimes we try to build little castles for ourselves of invulnerability. Sometimes we can do that with wealth. We have enough of it, we think that we'll be invulnerable. We'll get through, a lot of the worst. Um, but it doesn't help. My experience, I've counseled many people with wealth. They suffer, believe me. Sometimes they suffer because they're wealthy, actually. It separates them, causes all these sorts of awkward things. And my heart goes out to them because it's really, it's really something. It's still suffering. One of the things that, while I'm thinking about it, that people do that I wish they didn't, but they do it anyway, which is they push away their suffering by comparing it to others and saying, my suffering is less. I'm a wealthy white person, or I'm this or I'm that, and there's a way that their suffering is dismissed. It's even worse if they're doing it to someone else, dismissing their suffering because somehow it doesn't register in their scale of who's suffering the most. I don't think it matters, really. I don't think it matters when it comes to suffering. It all matters. Everyone's suffering matters. Everyone's heart matters. And yes, sometimes it might be helpful to point out that this is a first world problem. Sometimes that's skillful. I certainly sometimes do that. But I'm also always careful that it's never dismissing someone's suffering, because that would be in itself harm, I think. That would be hurtful. And that would, if anything, encourage them to either dismiss their own suffering, turn away from it, or just be mad at me. And that's suffering, you know? So it's it's really the case that everybody's suffering matters. And watch your mind sometimes when it negates your suffering. It can be cruel. And sometimes you dig down to something that doesn't feel all that significant, but nonetheless hurts. And you'll find something really precious. You'll find this common humanity. You know, I have some of this in me. Some silly part of me thinks I should be better than this. You know, it has this, you should be better than this. You shouldn't, you shouldn't be insulted by what someone said, but I am. You know, I do take it personally. So to actually take the moment to, wow, no, it really hurts to be misinterpreted. And if I hurt because I've been misinterpreted by someone, then anybody else is going to feel that way too. And there is a certain maturity. I mean, there's sometimes it's just so clear that somebody's response to me is them that I don't, don't go into anything at all. But it's not always so clear, especially with the people who are closest. And so, there's always a moment with that to recognize, oh, human, we're social animals. It hurts when we're misinterpreted. It also hurts when people catch us doing things that are not so noble, That hurts in a different way. All right, anyone else want to hop in there with a comment, story, question, share?
Yeah, I guess I have
Donna.
a question. I'm not even sure I can put it into words, but I'll try. And I'm thinking of my own mother's passing and decline, which was very long term. And she suffered a lot, and I utilized this is suffering a lot to try and be with her. Um, I'm trying to think of like what are some examples of skillful ways or right view when there's multiple sufferings, right? So you may have a difficult history, a difficult past, so you have your own suffering, you have the person suffering who you're trying to accompany. Is it just sinking into your own body? I just, and I'm not expressing the question well, but you could
Yeah,
have five or six sufferings in one,
absolutely. You can have a storm of sufferings, really.
right?
But right at the heart of it, oops, excuse me, right at the heart of it, is presence, it is the central core of your energy. And so when you use a phrase like this is suffering, even if it's this is suffering and that's suffering and that's suffering, and that's suffering, and that's suffering, there's a way that you settle into this core of your energy, this core of presence in relationship to all of it. I don't know that it matters that much whether there's one or several of these. And when sometimes you're a mess and they're a mess and whatever, even sometimes through laughter, it's like there's this sense of, oh, we're in this, and that it restores something. This might be a way to think of it, but like this core, the more you like access this core, become interested in it. What is this? There's a presence in us which is sorrowless. Even though we have sorrow, we can accompany ourselves with something that is beyond sorrow. Maybe sorrowless isn't quite the right word. I'm just using the Buddha Sutta talks about it as the sorrowless. as we witness, say, the loss of something, something ending, what witnesses it? There's a certain way that it is deathless, the deathless. When we're in the midst of chaos, and we know it to be chaos, there is something which is still and unchaotic in that. That's what we're getting to know. That's like the contemplative heart of this practice, is the peace, the stillness that comes through this sort of presence. And the ability both to be stable in it, but if not stable, to find it again when you get thrown off, which will happen again and again and again and again. Find this, like this core, which is actually okay. Like, it's the okayness right at the heart of things. And don't believe me, take a look. Take a look at that okayness right at the heart of things. I'll tell this story. I think Kate would be okay with me, but in the moment that our friend passed, right after, she didn't quite know what to do. People were a little bit were springing into action, and she got kind of pushed out of the way, but she just sat for a moment, and what she found was this incredible peace, which she called the formless. She just touched this formless peace, and she said it was just profound. And since then, she keeps asking herself, is it still here? And when she asks that question, she notices it's still here. So this peace that seemed to have come to her as a gift in a rather extreme situation was actually just an opening, a pointer to what's always here, what's always here, what's always possible, right at the core, right at the heart of our experience, is this place that's okay, which we can get, of course, distracted from and pulled off into a storm of other sorts of feelings and forget that it's there. But I really love her practice to just ask, is it here? Is it still here? And to settle back to that, the peace that's at the heart of things. All right, I think this is probably a great place to leave you. So heading into your holiday, I hope you have a really enjoyable, and if not enjoyable, a learning experience holiday. Make it holy by your presence and your willingness to, be with things as they are. So, and I'll see you next week. You can tell me about it. You're well.